Caring for spiritual leaders. Every local church should provide ample material support for those spiritual leaders who devote significant amounts of time serving as spiritual shepherds. Here's Gene.
The Old Testament setting deals with the priests and the Levites. And we have it here. The Levitical priests and the whole tribe of Levi, from which the priests come, will have no portion or inheritance with Israel. That is, the material portion in the land. They will eat the Lord's fire offerings. That is their inheritance. Although Levi has no inheritance among his brothers, the Lord is his inheritance, as he promised him. You are to give him the first fruits of your grain, new wine, oil, and the first sheared wool of your flock. And of course, in another place, it spells out that this is the tithe. And in that case, the tithe was actually of grain, of wine, of oil. That was their bartering system. That was the way in which they measured what they gave. They didn't have the same currency that we have, of course, in those days. So we go back to the basic principle, and that is the tithe in terms of the material things. So here we have a statement of that, and in terms of caring for the spiritual leaders, those who are responsible to give direction to the church. And 1 Timothy 5:17 to 18 really deals with that in the New Testament, where Paul talks about the elders who are good leaders. They work hard, and they should be considered worthy of an ample honorarium. Double honor is sometimes translated honorarium, sometimes translated double honor. We're to honor all spiritual leaders, but there are those who deserve double honor, and there the double means material honor as well as just honor. And it's taking care of them physically. And it says, especially those who work hard at preaching and teaching, for the Scripture says, you must not muzzle an ox that is threshing grain, and the laborer is worthy of his wages. And that's actually a quote from Jesus as well. And so he's talking about material support, whether it's money to buy food, or if it's in an economy where you have food per se, as it was in Israel, grain or whatever, there is to be this specific commitment to caring for spiritual leaders. And the reflection response question is, what would happen if all believers in local communities of faith provided 10% of their income to care for spiritual leaders to devote full-time to the ministry? If I gave you a calculation of what that would mean, it would boggle your mind. In terms of the money that would come in to care for our spiritual leaders, to support missionaries, to send them around the world, to take care of them, if every Christian was obedient to that, just that principle there of the tithe, it would be absolutely amazing what would happen. Another thing that would happen, you probably wouldn't have any building funds. You wouldn't need them. You'd have the money not only to care for everybody, but to build the buildings as well. All you got to do is put a pencil to that in terms of what people give, and it would be absolutely amazing. That's the potential that's out there through obedience. So, that's something that we really need to evaluate. In terms of my own experience as being a pastor elder in our own church over the years with the elders that I've worked with, they've been incredibly responsive to this principle in terms of taking care of spiritual leaders. And I remember one time in my own ministry, I was really concerned because I knew that some of our pastors were having a rough time making ends meet. And I just didn't feel that the giving or the budget for salaries was keeping up with the economic needs of our pastors and our staff. And that's a tough thing to do when you're a recipient of that kind of thing yourself. And so I went to the elders and I said, here is a suggestion. I think we just need to evaluate this. They all agreed. We appointed a task force. They weren't elders, they were godly men that we asked to do something that was very significant. And that is, we gave them this task force. We gave them job descriptions of all of our staff. We gave them years of experience in the ministry for all of our staff. We gave them the educational background of all of our staff, plus all of their experience that goes into that. And then we said, in view of our location here in this particular part of the country, the cost of living, etc., tell us, without knowing what we pay our staff, tell us what we ought to be paying our staff. So it was a very objective process. And these 7 individuals went to work in evaluating all of that. And when they came back, they sort of startled our elders. They didn't know what they were doing, but they actually told us we needed to double the salaries, particularly of our pastors. They said, your support staff is pretty well done, but in terms of our pastoral staff, you need to double their salaries. They didn't know they were telling us that. Now, what do you do with that? Well, they took it seriously. The elders took it seriously. It took us 3 years to make the process to get where we ought to be. But it took this group of people who knew what the cost of living was, what it took to be comfortable, not worried about income, to tell us what we needed to be paying our staff. Was our staff happy? You better believe it, including yours truly. And I was thinking about that today in terms of, in our culture, how we need to evaluate that as well, some other factors. I didn't suggest these at the time, but I think I would suggest them if we did that again. And by the way, we've done that 2 or 3 times during the time I was senior pastor. We'd evaluated every several years. But number one is we ought to pay our pastors in our culture enough so they can tithe. If they can't tithe because they don't have enough money, we're not paying them enough. Because we need to lead by modeling. Number 2, we ought to pay them enough in our culture to save 10% at least. At least 10% for the future. And number 3, we ought to pay them enough they can take vacations with their children and recoup, because that's a principle of Scripture, to rest and recoup. And those are factors that need to be factored in to this whole situation. So it's a very practical principle, isn't it, that needs to be applied in every local church situation. I'm thankful that I've worked with elders and leaders who've been very responsive to that over the years, to give us guidance as a body in how to take care of those who are spiritual leaders. So, the principle reads, every local church should provide ample material support for those spiritual leaders who devote significant amounts of time serving as spiritual shepherds.